Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Sanders, head of the CICMQ programme, and welcome to the 105 session for CICMQ 11s. And I'm really pleased that we've got long-standing CICMQ organisation Anixter with us today. We have Lisa Humphreys, Bryony, and the cast of thousands from Westco Anixter. And so thank you very much indeed for joining. They're going to take us through what they've done, what they're doing, some RPA stuff, and everything else. It's very interesting. And once again, organisations of CICMQ excel themselves in what they've been doing since lockdown. So there's an awful lot of really good stuff in here again. So thanks very much indeed, guys, for putting it all together. James, you can now share your screen, and over to you. If anybody's got any questions in the meantime, they can put it in the chat box, which you're very welcome to do that. And there we are. So over to you guys at Anixter.
Thank you, and thank you, Chris, and thank you everyone for joining us with this today. We've been really excited just to show you what we've been doing and what we're planning to do for the rest of this year. Okay, could you go on to the first slide for us, please, Jim? Thank you. So 2020, obviously we've heard now from several companies over the last few months during these CICMQ best practice sessions, just how difficult the year's been, the challenges that no one expected. We've had to change so much. We've had to change how we work, where we work, how we communicate, a lot of differences and a lot of challenges. I'll not go back into what we've done. Obviously, everyone was in the same position, but it has been really difficult. But what have we got from that? Could you go to the next slide, please, Jim? So what we've taken from it is, what was the bits that we found hung out that we needed to concentrate on a lot more than what we were doing, or just highlighting them. So the first thing was collaboration. It was really important to us just how important we collaborated with different teams, different departments. We also had the strength of the relationships that we had. It was important to us. We always thought it was really strong anyway, but we thought it was really important that that was built. The communication with different sets of people, customers, vendors, people within our own business really needed to hype up. It wasn't a case that we could just nip down the corridor anymore. It wasn't a case that there was nothing really urgent or important that needed talking about. There were some major challenges that we had to discuss. And we also, as a business, obviously, we had to think about that balance of what made the business continue. We needed to be commercially aware, so we still needed our sales to go ahead. We needed to understand how best we could manage that in the difficult climate. But also we needed to manage our risk. So the customers who couldn't pay us, how did we organise that? Lots of things to take into consideration. And then it also just led to us thinking, how can we make our efficiencies even better? How can we work more cleanly, more efficient, and the best for every department? Next slide, please, Jim. So what we did, we took all the challenges that we had from 2020 and the whole COVID era, and using our Blue Book principles, which if you don't know about the Westco Anixter Blue Book, I urge you to go onto our website and have a look at it. It's just our culture, it's exactly how we work and how we run. We wanted to bring into 2021 what we could do to improve, enhance and develop. And the positivity around it has been amazing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand you over to some members of the UK&I team who's been working on these different projects that we've got going. And they'll be able to explain in a little bit more detail for you. So first of all, I'd like to hand over to Alex, please.
Hi, so yeah, my name is Alex and I've been part of the credit risk team at Anixter here for about just under 2 years now. And at Anixter, we've recently been introduced to RPA, which stands for Robotic Process Automation. And this is being rolled out to representatives in different departments at Anixter as we speak. A brief description of RPA is that it is like a virtual robot which will run tasks on your behalf. The form of this can take is split into two very useful categories. Firstly, there is what you could call an unattended bot, which is where a robot is programmed to run at a scheduled time to complete the task, ready for whenever you need it. So a common use of this is to run file refreshes or downloads or macros overnight, so it is ready for when you start working in the morning. Alternatively, there is what you call an attended bot, which is where the user will click a button as and when you need to run the program. This is more commonly used for tasks at Anixter. We would use this for invoice pulling or tasks that are needed on demand, where the task is more likely needed at request rather than at regular intervals. The programs that are created to be run by these bots are created on the programming tool Uipath, which is a very useful programming tool, and this can be used for a variety of different tasks over most desktop and browser applications. Next slide, please, Jim. RPA is being rolled out around Anixter via what's called the Citizen Developer Program, where at least one person from each department will become a citizen developer. This is someone who will learn the basics of UI programming and will also have subject knowledge of the tasks to be programmed, as they are trying to automate tasks both for themselves and for others in the same department. In the credit department, we have myself and James, who is looking after the PowerPoint today, and you'll speak to him later on in the presentation. There will also be a few experts within the business who will have more knowledge on the Uipath programming, and they will train up the citizen developers, help with any queries, and will look into your bigger projects which run on multiple systems and maybe are more complex to program. These will usually show a larger return on investment in time saved. As citizen developers, we have weekly calls together to create a knowledge pool and in the future use each other's ideas and creations for automations within our own departments. This is a great exercise in collaboration and extremely useful in troubleshooting when you are stuck with a certain task. Next slide, please, Jim. So here at Anixter, one of our key Blue Book principles is that change equals opportunity, which equals growth. And personally, I see RPA as a step in the right direction for this. As we know, technology is always changing and improving. And as a business, we try and use these improvements to grow. These improvements make daily jobs more efficient and in turn free up both time and resources, which can lead to more opportunities. And using these free time and opportunities can lead to growth both within the team and for the individual themselves. And to talk a little bit more about the opportunities and why we would use RPA, I'm just going to pass you on to Danny as part of our team.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. My name's Danielle, but everyone calls me Danny. I've been a part of Leeds' credit control team for about 6 months now. So I'd like to talk about why robotics is useful. It'll run the long, boring admin tasks, which give back time to spend doing more value-add activities, such as, well, me in credit control. I'd be able to spend more time chasing my smaller accounts for payment, which I wouldn't always get around to. Just to clarify, it will not remove any jobs. It will just save time for the individuals to be able to do more personal tasks. The bots also avoid the risk of human error, so they can be creative with error handling, which means if the file is running and it comes across an error, it'll automatically stop and send an email notification saying that it couldn't complete rather than completing it with the error. It's also useful because it promotes talent in employees. For example, the time spent doing the tasks manually can be invested in personal development instead, like completing courses or doing further training. Next slide, please. Okay, so what robotics can do is it can run and download files overnight. So when you log in the morning, the files are already completed or just ready to run. It can also pull large amounts of information, such as invoices or documents from the systems. It can copy and paste large amounts of data, refresh data, and even run macros. Next slide, please. Like everything, robotics also has its limitations. So it can't make any judgment calls that can't be resolved with a formula. So for example, Alex in our credit risk team, if he wants to input a credit limit for a customer, a bot couldn't do this, as getting that figure isn't always consistent and there are many factors that need to be taken into account that can't be formatted. They also can't read documents that aren't formatted in a consistent fashion. So it would have no problem reading Anixter's customer invoices, but because they're all formatted exactly the same, or it wouldn't be able to read customer purchase orders, for example, because they're all different and all the information is in different parts of the purchase order. It also can't remove any team members, so it can't replace anybody. So all the work is still there, it just takes that and runs with it. that's the end of the robotics section. Thank you for listening. I'd like to introduce Lydia now.
Hi everyone, my name's Lydia. I've been working in the Anixter credit team for just over 2 years now, based in Sheffield. And today I'd really like to present the second part of our presentation, which features around a programme called Spring into Action. Next slide, please, Jim. Thank you. So what is Spring into Action? Well, this is our latest credit sales initiative, which forms part of a global company incentive to improve our working capital across all areas of the business. Now, why is it called Spring into Action? Now, we did launch the project at the start of May when it was supposed to be spring. And this also follows the trend of some of our other company initiatives that we've done in the past, such as Winter Wonderland and Summit Spectacular, which also sort of follow the pattern of it being centered around a season. Now, the main focus of this programme revolves around a joint system that we use in Anixter called DTS, which stands for Dispute Tracking System. And this is a programme used by both sales and credit to monitor and enter invoice disputes. And the idea behind this incentive is to really get sales and credit working together. And we've actually inputted this in the form of a competition. So the overarching aim is for sales to try to reduce both the value and the number of overall disputes that they currently have held in the system, which is eating away at our working capital. So this is money that's being held due to a dispute, which once resolved, we can re-inject back into the business. How are we going to monitor this? Obviously, like I said, it is a competition. So we're really trying to drive that, relationship between sales and credit and get some, motivation going to get this money back into the business. So we have several measures in place, such as weekly league tables for both sales and credit to monitor how they're doing. This has been really important for sales to be able to track their progress against different sales locations and to drive that competitive spirit, which has been great. We're also monitoring it from a credit perspective to see, for example, how quickly we as a credit team can identify a dispute, looking for patterns with customers, for example, that we're quite familiar with, to try and really get the process to be more efficient and quicker to resolve. So like I said, we've got the weekly league tables. We've also got things like spot prizes in place using a system that we have called Reward Zone. So both sales and credit will be rewarded as part of the initiative, depending on their success and how well they can do at driving down our disputes and the value of overall cash that is stuck in this system. So it's been a great incentive so far. As I said, we kicked it off in May and we've been seeing some really exciting results and a lot of competitive spirit with both sales and credit, which has been fantastic. So I'd like to pass you on to Michelle now, who's actually going to show you a little bit more in depth about how these results have actually been translating on our side and to go through that with you. So over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Lydia. Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle and I'm the credit team leader in the UK. So enthusiasm is one of the key principles in our Blue Book. It's one of the greatest business assets in the world. It beats money, power, and influence. It has been one of the key drivers of our success. And the next slides are a testament that enthusiasm brings results. So the charts I'm going to show you today are based on the 3-week results for both sales and the credit team. The first chart, as you can see, is based on the average days past due in the credit team. So this is a reflection of the progress of the top 5 credit controllers across EMEA. So as you can see, there's a lot of traffic and brilliant results from week 1 to date. So next slide, please, Jim. So this one here is a sales chart, which is based of the percentage of disputes against the total AR per country. So as you can see, there's lots of numerous countries actually that have maintained 0 level of disputes, which is phenomenal. So since the kickoff, there has been a drastic reduction of value, nearly a quarter in value actually, and the aging of the disputes has massively dropped. So the spring interaction does not just, make disputes value drop down, but it's also a proactive measure of capturing queries as well as getting resolutions in a timely manner. So even before the items fall due. What I really find interesting and love about this initiative is it brings about a healthy competition. So you will be really surprised that you're actually surrounded by a number of competitive colleagues all along. This initiative also cements, encourages, and renews relationships within internal and external stakeholders. Plus, it really makes work fun, to say the least. So whilst everyone is whizzed up with this spring into action, this initiative actually brings about a legacy. So resulting to focus on identifying and analyzing root causes as well as behaviors. So just to prove that we aren't about just all talk, we are actually excited to let you know that we have invited someone from sales. So we have Barbara Jackson, who is a sales team leader in the UK. So she's from the Warrington branch. Over to you, Barb.
Thanks, Michelle. Nice to speak to you all. I feel a bit like a fish out of water with all these credit people on the call. So
don't worry, they generally play nice, Barbara. You'll be fine.
Right. Okay, good. So we all know the history between sales and credit departments. Both parties at first glance appear to have opposed objectives, but are they? Both departments actually want the same thing, profit. By working together and creating a strong working relationship, both departments can achieve their goal. And at Anixter, we do this by communicating with each other on a regular basis. We have monthly Teams calls where we discuss queries against each account and also talk about late payments. We have the DTS system that I think Lydia touched on a little bit earlier. This is where credit share information with sales on invoice queries, and this allows sales to also speak to the customer, giving a two-pronged attack. Finance don't necessarily understand the implications of goods arriving on time, so they may not be in a rush to clear late payments. However, procurement, project managers and installation teams do, and this is where sales have the relationships with the customers that can help credit to resolve late payments and invoice queries. By working together, this often results in the queries being resolved a lot quicker. We also do joint calls. Not just, well, obviously over the last sort of 18 months, we've not been able to go out and visit customers together. So we've had to make do with everybody else with Teams calls, Zooms calls, etc. But prior to that, we did on regular basis go out and visit customers together. This shows the customers that both departments are aligned and that we're here to serve their needs. This can be of benefit to the customer if they're working on a particular project and their client has got extended payment terms and they may need help from Anixter on getting extended payment terms for them paying us. And this is where the two departments work together to try and get the best service for the customer so that we can all win that business. So that then leads on to information sharing. We see it as it's a two-way street. It's not just, credit asking us for help on getting payments in, on getting queries sorted. We also liaise with them because there's no point in sales raising a quote to a new customer if that customer can't get the credit. So that would just be a total waste of people's time. So we tend to liaise with credit when we have new accounts, when we've got large projects that may exceed existing customers' credit limits, and we have that conversation to see how we can best work to achieve that same goal. So the way that sales see it is credit is customer service. The more you understand your customer, the better you can serve them. And then that just gets the best for both departments.
Thank you so much for your input, Barb, and I really appreciate you gracing this presentation for us. So I'm going to hand you over to Jim now, who will talk more about credit risk analysis. Over to you, Jim.
Mitch and Barb. So I've got the pleasure of making you all a bit hungry before lunch and talking about our Nando's risk portfolio that we've created since March 2020. So for those of you who haven't been to Nando's, where have you been? You need to get there. It's amazing. Also, I think we've got someone, yeah, that. And then B, what we have done is try to implement that kind of source into a risk portfolio in Anixter. So on the left-hand side, you might see and recognize something that Boris Johnson brought out, the five-level tier system with regards to COVID-19 and how we were going to be tracking that and the lockdown process. What we thought is, how can we make it interesting? How can we make it stick within the business that we have high-risk customers and we have low-risk customers? Now, rather than doing a numbered tier system or just high risk and low risk, this is where the Nando's source came in. And I'm going to point out Hussein because he's on the call at the moment and he's our credit controller in Saudi Arabia. A lot of the customers in Saudi Arabia are higher risk, so we've classed them as hot. And it's amazing how much that sticks more than saying they're a high risk customer. So I'll go on and explain a bit more why we've done this. So why have we implemented this throughout 2020 and into 2021? So obviously the biggest highlight is COVID-19. So I've been at Anixter for 4 years now. And we've always said it's a nice to have for the first 3 years. Can we get a risk portfolio? We hear it on other calls that companies do that and it's beneficial to them. However, we always put it on the back burner. When obviously COVID hit, that came to the forefront of our minds, and we need to be able to highlight to the business, what is our risk? What is our ongoing exposure within the UK and Ireland markets? So that's kind of what's driven it in March. What has come out of that is we've also found that this has helped us be a bit more proactive with regards to credit risk management. So Bryony will touch on what we've done with regards to the customer service, but we have allowed, because we can make these risks measurable, we can highlight to business and say, this is the way our business is going and the risks that are increasing, decreasing, and the reasons behind that. So again, it's not just us saying to the business, we know something's going to happen. We're concerned that we're going to have to increase our bad debt provision. We can make that measurable and now share that so they're aware of that. And again, another reason, like I mentioned before, we have got excellent partnerships with some of our vendors. I'll touch on Concredo as a specific one in a minute. But there's so much data out there that you can use and you can implement into a scorecard system that we just thought we can't not let this go to waste. And that is, again, another reason why we've implemented this process. So what do we measure? Again, Brian will go into a bit more detail on this, but essentially these are the key criteria that we look at. So recent payment performance with us, any decline in trends, we account for that. The current account status, particularly, and prioritizing any overdues. And the credit rating on the credit agency report. So that is obviously Concredo in the UK. Again, like I mentioned, the information that we can pull out of Concredo is amazing. And that's helped us create this risk portfolio. Cash flow from latest financials. Again, this can be outdated because of the regulations in the UK. However, at this point in time, it's still giving us a good idea of how these businesses were looking from a cash flow perspective moving into COVID-19. And also our blue chip entities. So as I share a chart, I think it's the next slide, we trade with a lot of publicly traded companies. Now, obviously, some of them are high risk, but a majority are low risk, and there's not real too much concern from a credit perspective. So we've accounted for that with regards to our scorecard. So just a summary here of how we looked in March 2020 and how our current portfolio is looking. So this is the percentage of our total AR and how they were bucketed in our lovely Nando's source criteria. I'd say that the biggest change that we can see is a shift from the lemon and herb and the general trend going up on each kind of level. So our extreme and hot top 2 risk criterias have gone up by about 7%. Now, the volume of customers within this region has actually dropped. So we have less customers in here, but we are trading more with them. Now, I know Lise, Mitch, and the rest of the UK credit team, they could tell you what is going on with every single account in those 2 sections. So we know as a business who those risks are with, and we are comfortable enough, as comfortable as you can be, that we know whether we're going to get paid on time. What we then need to focus on is really the next step down. So these mild and medium, where as Danny said before, it's a lot easier to miss a £200 customer or a £5,000 customer than it is to miss a 200k customer. However, that adds up and eats to a bad debt. So we need to focus on, as a business, being proactive. What are these shifts and how can we account for that and flag that, so we can be ahead of the curve and make sure we're top of the list and getting our money before companies go into administration. So what I'll do, I will pass over to Bryony now. I will pass over to Rob, not to Bryony, who will discuss how we've implemented this. And thank you.
I think you're on mute, Rob.
So hi, thanks, Jim. My name's Rob. I'm also work in the credit department. I've been here for a number of years, and I just wanted to give you a brief overview on how we use the information practically on a day-to-day basis and how we use it to tailor-make reports and target high-risk customers. So we've always had an in-house mainframe system, which we supplement with Microsoft Access. So we've always had the ability to incorporate a lot of information from our own databases, so we can produce an overdue debts list according to any criteria that we chose. So next slide, please, Jim. However, as credit reference agencies provide more and more information, we needed a way to incorporate that into our system. It was out there, but just accessing it was not practical, looking up individual customers. So we wanted to actually have it on our reports when we were on the debtors list. Unfortunately, we didn't really have the expertise to know how to do this, but our risk team, sort of young and fresh out of university, were very tech savvy, and they were able to incorporate this information into all our reporting. So it's instantly accessible when we run our reports. So now, straight away, when we're chasing a customer, we can see their credit agency rating, whether they're extreme, whether they're hot, and that way we can actually target them earlier. So I think targeting these customers earlier helps our cash flow, it builds relationship with these customers, and it minimizes our bad debts. We can enforce our terms much quicker. And this is not about actually just closing these accounts down. As we saw from Jim's summary of our risk accounts, they've actually gone up. But I think our relationships with these accounts are a lot better now. We speak to them earlier, we involve sales earlier, we spend more time on them because some of the lower risk customers are probably going to get paid anyway. So I think it's managing these accounts rather than just closing them down. And I think it has really improved our cash flow, and it's improved our bad debts. Yeah, next slide, please, Jim. Okay, if I'm going to hand over to Bryony now, we'll give you a bit more information on, again, how we use the information on a daily basis.
Thanks, Rob. Hi everyone, my name's Bryony. I'm a part of the UK credit control team. So to stay on track of our collections risk during the pandemic, we used risk categories, and this will consist of 2 key elements. So the first one being normal. This would be your general contact from our credit controllers to the customer's account payables team to check the status of their work pattern and payment cycle and provide extra support where necessary. And the second would be proactive, and this would consist of the contact to customers, senior finance and AP leads by our credit manager and credit team leader, just to check in and fully understand their plans and concerns from a business and cash flow perspective, with the aim to potentially drafting and offering payment solutions and support where necessary. So the risk reports we came up with identifies key customers by AR value and combined with commercial elements, giving a risk category. For example, from extreme, which is the highest, to lemon and herb, which is the lowest. Next slide, please, Jim. Thank you. So here you can see the risk classification table and the criteria that we use for each level. So I'll just quickly go through this. So extreme, which is the highest, first criteria for this would be payments over 20 days late and 25 grand overdue. And the second would be that they would show on our risk/watch list. Hot is payments over 20 days late and any overdue. The second criteria, they would have a risk index of 30. And number 3, overdue of 25 grand. Medium, this is for payments over 10 days late and just any overdue. And then the second criteria for medium would be the risk index of 50. And number 3, overdue of 5 grand. And finally, the criteria number 4 for medium is a current ratio of under 1. So mild, this would mean, this would be for accounts with payments over 5 days late and or any overdue on their account. And then lemon and herb, which is the lowest one, would just be everybody else. So that is how we managed and how we stayed on track with all our overdue payments and how we would help customers who were struggling with their cash flow throughout the pandemic. So thank you very much. Now I'm going to pass back to Lisa.
Thank you, Brandy, and thank you, everyone. I'm sure everyone will agree that that was really informative, and I hope everyone's got some brilliant ideas from what you guys have done, so thank you. And just before we finish, I just want to talk about a little touch on what I think Michelle's already mentioned on one part, but just the results that we've had from some of this already. So the results for the first month into Spring in Action, we didn't get them until after we'd put this pack together, but already, just as Michelle touched on, we've had just in 1 month a dramatic reduction in the aging of any dispute. So there's been a real concerted effort on how old the disputes are and getting those sorted. Obviously, we all know the newer the disputes are, the easier they are to do. So that's going to create a massive difference, I think, in the next few months moving forward. But also the value has dropped. Michelle, I think you said by nearly a quarter. I mean, that's huge just in 1 month. That's a massive amount. So really pleased that that's kicking on as well. And I know Lydia mentioned too about we've done similar initiatives in the past. So we've done Summer Spectacular in a Winter Wonderland. So they concentrated on cash collection and aging as well. And the legacy that we mentioned will come from Spring into Action. We can see that that's still happening from those 2 previous initiatives too. So over the past few months, years since we've done them, we've seen dramatic results. So for example, we've seen our past due reduced by nearly a third in the last few years of over 60. So this was the really difficult old debt that we were really struggling to get in. That value's dropped by nearly a third. The number of customers involved in that has halved. And that's a huge amount because that's obviously where there's a lot of work goes into it. Just in the last year, with the work that's gone in with the risk elements, so the Nando's work and the proactiveness we've done from that, we can see that our collections through 2020 have been really stable. And that's despite having the infamous COVID happening during the middle of that. And the collections from the start of this year have been the highest since they have been since 2019. So we've really seen a back to where we were before and more. So it just shows that all these initiatives that the guys are working on are really working, and they're showing some really positive information for us, which is good. So thank you everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed the cast of thousands, as Chris called us. I think it's important that we all got involved. This is an absolute team effort, and the team are brilliant at doing it. So I think it's really important that they got involved too. But obviously, any questions, we're open to them. So please just
Thank you very much, Lisa, and thanks very much for the team, and also for to Barbara for braving the credit management call, which is great. You're actually, you're remarkably human looking for a salesperson. It's fantastic. Thank you very much, Anixter. Absolutely brilliant. Brilliant. If you can stop sharing your screen now, James, that'd be terrific. Okay. Yeah, I do have some. There's a question that came up early on, which was talking about RPI. Here we are. As development of robotics and AI evolves, do you see the requirement for human workforces devolving? I'm guessing you're meaning changing, reducing, getting spreading. What's your views on that? Let's go to Lisa.
Yeah, do you know what, as Danny brought up in the presentation, actually, we don't see it as a replacement for the team at all. We see it more as just an efficiency. So it's freeing up the time of our team as opposed to replacing them. It's giving us time to do value add work. So that's to us, that's the whole point of the robotics. It's getting rid of that piece of work that adds no value to your day whatsoever and allows you to do the stuff that we actually want to be doing.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Lisa. Barbara, thanks very much again for joining. A pleasure to have you on the call. Thank you. I've got a question for you. Last week we had our friends, or a couple of weeks back, we had our friends from Hilti on, and Lydia, I think, is on the call here, or Jodie's on the call. One of the things that they did, and it'll be interesting to get a sales perspective on this. One of the things that they did is they introduced days sales outstanding targets for their salespeople. How do you feel about that being added to your sort of revenue or margin targets, having a DSO added to those targets?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good idea. I mean, we're trying to sort of get the guys more initiated on reducing sort of, invoice queries, and one of the ways that we've targeted that is we've introduced into, or we're going to be introducing into their bonus package, if they create a sales error that creates an invoice query, then that'll be a deduction on their bonus payment.
Ooh.
So that's the first step. So whether we then go further on from that, I don't know, because obviously we all want to reduce the number of queries that we get. So
that's interesting. So you're clawing back stuff if in the event it goes wrong. Well, that's really good. I also, listening to what you guys are talking about, there is a theme on these presentations from CICMQ organisations, and we've seen it with Hilti, Adecco, Waitmans, Tarmac, Arco, Equinix, all of the organisations that we've had on, including you guys, that you're looking at from a high performing team perspective. You're all doing the same sorts of things. You've got common goal, which is the disputes in this case for you guys. And in Hilti's case, it was the DSO targets. You've got an enthusiasm, which Michelle clearly demonstrates. You've got an enthusiasm for what you're doing, and that's about people being engaged and pushing stuff. And also, you're working with your stakeholders. So there's the same common theme. You have a common goal, you've got motivated and engaged people, and you're working strongly with stakeholders. And those are the three things that we see that are tracking through all of the CICMQ organisations that we've got on and that we've had on these sessions. And that's really good. Now, the blue book, for those of you that don't know what it is, I put it in the chat. If you Google Anixter Blue Book, you get a PDF of it, and it's there. Right, it's widely available, so I recommend you take a look at it. It's been a while since I looked at it. I think when I actually went to see Bryony the first time in Sheffield, I actually got a little blue book, I was given a little blue book as one of the parts of the accreditation. You talked about customer visits, which is terrific. I love the idea of the citizen developer, like this, and that's something that you mentioned there, Alex. Talking about the Uipath. Ask us what the Uipath again. Mention that. What was that again? The Uipath.
So Uipath is the programming tool. So how it will roughly work is myself and James will go onto Uipath and try and program the task on there. So
right,
like macros, but you do it through different applications. So you can use like the browser.
Okay. And you've got super users in each team that do that.
So in each department, hopefully, I think the end goal is to have someone who can do it to a certain extent and do your simpler tasks. And then for us, it's in the US. We have the people who are experts in it, and they will help us with more complex tasks.
Brilliant. Okay, that's really good. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, just add on that, Chris. I think the great thing we've seen, like I say, it's being led from our headquarters in America, but we haven't heard of a similar program out there where we're trying to incorporate a large knowledge base. So we have about 120, potentially a bit more. I've just made that number up off the top of my head. People in the citizen developer program touching sales, credit, operations, every part of the business. So we are creating that knowledge pool, and as Alex said, we are having weekly calls. So if someone doesn't know, we can bounce those ideas off someone else, or they might be doing something which we can use and implement, because there is so much you can do. I'm sure you've all seen.
It is remarkable what you can do. It's interesting. We've got an RPA and automation expert coming on in September to talk about this stuff. So that's really good. So what I'll do is I'm going to stop the recording now. But we'll carry on afterwards. So thanks very much, Lisa, Bryony, James, Rob, everybody, Lydia, everybody that spoke, Danny and Alex and the enthusiastic Michelle. It's great, and also Barbara for joining the call and braving the credit world. So thanks very much for that, for everybody. And this will be on YouTube. It'll likely be on YouTube early part of next week. CICM YouTube. I'll keep everybody posted. It'll be put onto LinkedIn as well, so that you can find it as well. So thanks very much, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording now, but we'll carry on talking afterwards.